Dominic, I don't know how to introduce you because you've got so many strings to your bow. But I know you through MCing on some of our shows and commentating. But probably most people know you from talkSPORT, where you're the sports correspondent for boxing and football.
Yeah, all round Egypt, Lee. That'll do. Yeah, I do. I mean, I've kind of been working in sport and sport broadcasting for a long time. I started out as a news reporter actually years and years ago, and then after about 6 years working in general news, I moved into sport. And so I started off on a paper, and I moved into radio. I've done a lot of radio over the years, and I was based in London for a good while. I've done all sorts of stuff in terms of, I've worked for various broadcasters, ITN and Sky and talkSPORT. I've had a long association with talkSPORT, and I moved back to Manchester. And now, after doing all sorts of stuff, mainly I cover United and City for talkSPORT, and also do the boxing. When they're covering fights, I'm involved in all of that as well, which is brilliant. And we went over for the most recent one we did was the Fury fight in Vegas, the Wilder fight, which I commentated on. So that was fantastic. So I've got a long association in that in terms of broadcasting. And I've written a couple of boxing books, one with Ricky Hatton, one with Crawler, more recently with Anthony. And so I still do a little bit of writing. And on my other kind of big thing really is working in community sport. And I work with Maverick Stars now. I've done lots of community projects over the years as well, with the sport business, which is a company I'm involved in, and other organisations to encourage people to get involved in sport, basically, and to work with businesses to get involved in sport, not just as sponsors, but to really get embedded in sport and use it, for the benefit of their staff. But also, more companies these days need to get involved in corporate social responsibility projects, and no better way than sport. So that's an area of work that I've always been involved in as well, in terms of helping people access sport, whether they're young people or whoever it is. And now I'm doing a lot of work in that area with Maverick Stars, which is a boxing charity, which is basically giving all sorts of people a chance. It's as simple as that, really. Young people a chance, and through the medium of boxing, if you like. So working with young people, get them in gyms. There's all sorts of initiatives. There's lots of high-profile stuff now.
Like involved with, because it seems like every gym I go to, they've got some involvement with the Maverick Star Trust. I've just been up in Liverpool. Yeah. I think they've been helping down at Kirkdale, and obviously Jamie Moore. I see that all the time because Jamie's our home gym, isn't it? But it seems like it's not just one. Moss Side Fire Station, Nigel Travis. Seems like she's working hard, the lady who set it up. Yeah,
it's Charlotte Gilly is the founder, and basically she wanted to put her own money into something to do some good. Simple as that, really. And that's what happened. I knew Charlotte from boxing training, and she, obviously in discussions that we had, she knew that I was working in the media, obviously, but also that I work in community sport as well, and it was just an obvious fit to get involved with Maverick as well, because what she's done is remarkable, really. I mean, in terms of, as I say, putting her own money in and helping just about every gym that's been in contact with her. But it's not just in Manchester. Obviously, you mentioned Merseyside, but it's everywhere. I mean, there are gyms now that Maverick Stars has helped throughout the country, and there are initiatives in place throughout the country. It's things like the Fit and Fed programs that we've heard a lot about. Obviously, Marcus Rashford in football has done great work on that. But Maverick's been doing that for more than a year, doing Fit and Fed, hunger projects for kids in school holidays and all that kind of stuff. And that's nationwide now. And there's Sting Like a Bee, which started in Manchester, hence the bee element to it. And obviously, we know about the phrase, but that's getting kids off the streets into gyms, kids at risk of antisocial behaviour, and there's a lot of knife crime, as we know, and that's what inspired that. So there's also these kinds of initiatives and that Maverick Stars has been leading the way with, and I think everyone in boxing is starting to get to know the charity, which is great, and that's the whole idea, is get more people involved, and we're trying to get more and more funding for various projects, and just use the power of boxing, because I don't need to tell you about it, I don't need to harp on about it. It's quite simple. It's an incredible thing for good in terms of the way it turns lives around. So it's as simple as that.
Involved in professional boxing and commentating like you are, but you're one of the guys who actually involved in grassroots, because I film a lot of the Northwest Regional shows and certainly the championships. And the person I bump into most is yourself. I mean, you have a close affinity with Timperley.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, the amateur scene's where what it's all about, really, isn't it? You know, you don't get anywhere without the amateurs, do you?
No.
It doesn't exist without the amateurs part of the game. So it's great going to the big shows, and it's great commentating on Tyson Fury, and, you know, that's absolutely fantastic. But, you know, he didn't come from nowhere. So where does it all begin? Where do you see the stars of the future? And that's what's really interesting. And, you know, some of the kids that I've seen train, and you know, it's just watching them develop, and that's why you know, obviously all the amateur shows are fantastic to go and see. And, you know, I jump in and do a bit of MCing now and again when I'm collared to do that, and it's all good fun. It's all good fun, and, you know, it's great anyway for you know, anyone that is serious about broadcasting in boxing or whatever sport it is. You know, you've got to understand the sport. You don't understand the sport if you're just turning up to the top shows at the O2 or the Manchester Arena or going to Vegas. You know, you've got to embed yourself in it, and you know, there's no better way than to go to the grassroots shows.
Yeah, this is why I say to people. This is why I say to people, I enjoy my job more than anything, because I get a chance to see the full package. I get to see them, you know, improve fight by fight, not just as professionals but as amateurs. I've followed them usually. Certainly for the last 8 years, I've been following the amateurs, and there's guys such as Zelfa Barrett now, you know, Lyndon Hart, Jack Cullen, all these guys that are coming through, Scott Fitzgerald. These are guys that I film, you know, in the Northwest circuit. And
I know I've seen all your videos, Lee. Busy man.
but that, as you were saying, this is what makes the journey even more fun, to follow it right away from the beginning. And but like I was saying, a man who's, you know, who's doing it at the level that you're doing at, you wouldn't think you'd bother spending the time to do that. And yet, you know, as I said, you know, every other show I turn up at, you're usually there.
I've obviously got nothing better to do, have I?
And how was that then? Because
it's get me out. I've got 3 young kids, Lee.
Yeah. So that's
why
to get out of the house.
Get out. Yeah, actually, I drag them along now as well. You know, they come to some of the shows as well, but they all do a little bit of training now as well. So it's yeah.
Where do they train out then? Timperley.
Yeah. Well, Mark Davidson's a great coach, and so that they go down there, and, you know, I'm not sure if they'll stick with it or whatever, but it's just great to get them in there and do it, and it's just, yeah, again, it's the power of the gym. We know what it's all about. It's just the best equaliser there is, isn't it?
Going back to boxing then again, as a fan, who's your favourite fighter at present? Current fighter.
Current fighter. Do you know what? I've got. I don't actually have one. I can't say that I've got one. Well, sorry. I'm talking nonsense. I mean, at the moment, Lomachenko. What I mean is, I don't have one that I think is my favourite all-time fighter.
Well, what about past
at the moment? Pardon?
What about past him?
Say that again.
Past fighters, you know, like my hero was Phil Duran and Mike Tyson. So,
yeah, well, I like Eubank back in the day that when that was all going on. And I know I'm probably in the minority there, in that, you know, a lot of people were Nigel Benn, and I get all that. And then I was a big Steve Collins fan, going back to that kind of era. And obviously, I mean, in terms of Stateside and Roy Jones Jr. and fighters like that. And again, but I don't have any that I would say that's the hero, that's the one, that's the, you know, the absolute. I think now, over time, I might, depending on what he does now, I mean, Lomachenko, I think, is kind of done something very different, and I'm hugely into what he did, which was a shame when you know, I went over to watch him fight, to watch Crolla fight him. I've got, you know, Crolla's a pal of mine, and I'm a massive Lomachenko fan, so watching that was a little bit uneasy, that fight. But I love Lomachenko. But again, you look at who else. I'm a big fan of Bivol. I like him. He's not looked that great the last time I watched him. He struggled a little bit with a bigger guy. It was a fellow actually that was, I can't remember his name now. He was in the Contender, wasn't he? What's his name? Bivol fought.
Yes, and oh, mine's gone blank, mate.
He fought over here. Oh, I can't remember his name. Anyway, see, I should have box rec on the go all the time, make myself look cleverly.
No,
Well, you know, he could be super mid, couldn't he? You know, at light heavy, he looked. There's much bigger men than him, but I like him. And obviously, there's the usual suspects and everything else. But I mean, like a lot of people, I got very much into the Manchester scene when, obviously, the likes of Farnell, Gomez, Brody, Ricky, when they were all coming through. You know, I think it was a really good era for everything. Really, I think Ricky tapped into that era in terms of Britpop and all the rest of it, and he put football together with it, and that was his fan base and everything else. But I think he just
Manchester was a popular place to go, wasn't it? It was the first time Manchester people were actually travelling from London because we had the racing, the Hacienda, you know, like the three fighters there that you're just talking about. It was an absolute golden period, not just for boxing, but for Manchester to be the middle of the centre of attention.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was all around the start of the 90s, wasn't it, in terms of the music and the Stone Roses and all the rest of it. But then it kind of led into Oasis, and that's what Ricky tapped into, all that kind of stuff. So it just kept going. But as you say, yeah, Manchester was the scene. Just, you know, obviously it's always been a scene for football. It's always been a scene for boxing. But in terms of really capturing the public imagination, I mean, I think really in terms of proper, pure crossover, Ricky was the one. You know, obviously,
it'll never happen again, will it?
No, I mean, you can make an argument. You can make an argument for all the other fighters and how great they were in their own right, but Ricky just managed to do that crossover thing, which is very hard to do, considering that he never fought on terrestrial TV as well. When you think about that, that's incredible. Because when people talk about Frank Bruno and Ben and Watson and Collins and Eubank and all that, you know, when they were fighting on huge TV audiences, Ricky was never a terrestrial fighter, and he still managed to get that fan base, and he still managed to be crossover, and he still managed to do what he did. So massively unique. You know, we know about how many people he took to the Mayweather fight in Vegas. I was one of them. I was working, but I mean, I would have gone anyway. And that was his thing. And he said it himself. I mean, quite rightly, his proudest boast is his fan base, because it's absolutely absurd what he managed to do.
Yeah, no, like you say, there's not many fighters that managed to make that crossover from being a boxer to being an actual, just a celebrity, if you know what I mean. And he was one of them. And
I think the nice thing about Ricky, if he'd have really wanted to push it further, you know, he could have been on every chat show. He could have been on every sport panel. He could have done, you know, he could have absolutely, really, really pushed himself to be on absolutely everything. But he was kind of true to what he's all about. He is Jack the Lad. He is a normal bloke who just wants to do normal stuff. So he didn't want to do all of that. Not, you know what I mean? He just wants to, he's kind of continued being the same fella.
I presume you'd see a lot of young Campbell on the circuit. You know, I film him a lot, and I've seen massive improvements in the lad. Be interested to see if he enters into the pro game.
I don't think there's any doubt about that. I think I've spoken to Matthew actually recently, and he was talking about Campbell, and obviously he's been working closely with him, and I think that, you know, obviously the way they see him and his style, that's the way he's going to be more suited. And he's getting to that age. I think he's 19 now. So I think watch this space. I don't think it'll be too long before he does turn over. And I think, you know, again, he's going to get a lot of eyes on him, isn't he? He's going to have a lot of pressure. But, you know, from what Matthew said, he's a great lad, got a great attitude. He's a chip off the old block. He's got all the chat. He's got all the gags. So, again, you know, I think it'll be very, very interesting to see how he does. And, you know, hopefully for him, he doesn't even... He doesn't think too much about what his old man achieved and just gets on and busy, you know, is his own man, as Matthew was. You know, Matthew had to deal with the shadow of Ricky, and he did it fantastically. So if Matthew's going to be the man in the corner, no better man to help out his nephew, but also a fella that just understands exactly what it's like to be in the limelight, and also to be in the shadow of the limelight, as in to be the one, he's not, you know, Ricky's there and you're there. And Matthew was like, well, he just dealt with it. It didn't bother him. He's his own man.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it is. He's going to get a lot of criticism, no matter how good or bad he is. But I just watch it, as we was talking before about the improvement. I think I filmed him in his third or fourth amateur fight, and the improvement that each fight is getting better and better. So it's his journey, and he really, really loves it as well. He really wants to do it. He's not doing it because his dad wants him to do it or his uncle wants him to do it. He's doing it because he loves it now.
Yeah, and that's quite clear. And apparently, ferociously dedicated.
Oh,
so,
yes.
that's more than half the battle, isn't it?
Yeah, he trains like a little demon, I must admit. He's, for a young kid, he's like his dad was, a true professional in that sense. But his dad was almost a complete... I met his dad when he was 14 years old. We went over to Denmark and Germany on a little mini tour, and he was one of the fighters with us. And we knew at 14 years old the kid was going to be special then. So,
was he at Sale West then, or is he still with Louvain?
No, he was with Sale West. He was with Paul Dunn. So Dunny brought him over, and I think he just won a silver medal at the European Junior Championships, and he was not just beating kids, he was stopping kids. And as a 11, 12, 13-year-old kid, that doesn't happen. Kids don't stop kids. Kids beat one another on points, but they don't stop one another. And he was stopping people for fun. So he had all.
I think sometimes that's a part of his career that people have neglect, if you like, that how skilled he was as an amateur. I mean, he got a bronze medal at the Worlds as well, didn't he, in Cuba? And then because when he became a pro, obviously that was his way. He wanted to have that fan-friendly style, but obviously very skilled amateur, Ricky, as well.
Well, the thing is, he was 18 and he won the seniors. It's a hard thing to do. Because you're not a man yet, and yet you're fighting men to win that title. Yeah. So, when he turned over, I think he turned over as soon as he won the championships, hadn't he? So he was still 18, not quite 19 yet. Phenomenal career. Never in a bad fight. It wasn't, though, was it?
No, I think I was lucky enough as well. I went to see when he stepped up to welter to fight Colazzo, because I was doing the book with him at the time. And I think, it's a brilliant fight, but again, that always sticks out as one of his toughest, hardest nights. He's a grueler for him. He put him down in the first round, thought it was going to be easy, and then it turned into an absolute, war for him against a bigger man. So he had his before obviously the defeats that people remember. He had tough nights. He had some really tough nights. Staxton for the British title as well. There's lots of tough nights that he had to deal with, but that's what the top fighters do, don't they? They deal with it.
Yeah. So, how's the lockdown been treating you? Have you managed to get loads of jobs done in the house, or have you been kept busy? I presume now the football going crazy, and every day there seems to be a new match on it. I presume talkSPORT's keeping you busy.
Yeah, the football's back on now. I think I did 4 games last week, covered 4 matches for talkSPORT. So. It's weird. Obviously, it's a strange thing with no fans and everything else, and the guidelines that are in place are really stringent. It's incredibly stringent the way football's dealing with it. It's impressive the way that all the clubs have adapted to it. So all the social distancing and all the PPE and all the questionnaires and the health form, taking your temperature on the way into every ground and all the rest of it it's been impressive to see. But yeah, otherwise, lockdown. I was busy enough really with Maverick Stars, and obviously the hunger projects and stuff like that. All the initiatives were going on, and I was trying to make sure that everybody knew about it. Make a bit of publicity about it, and speaking to the fighters involved, and obviously the Maverick ambassadors like Jamie Moore that you touched on before, Nigel Travis, Chantel Cameron, and Connor Tudsbury, who again we've both seen on the amateur scene, now part of Team GB. These are all these people are all involved in the charity, and also the charity is branching out, as I mentioned before. So again, the lockdown period was good to really get stuck into a lot of these projects, and it's expanding all the time, the charity. So like on Merseyside, Derry Matthews is heavily involved, and other gyms and everything else, but other parts of the country as well now. Tommy Coyle over in Hull. It's just branching out everywhere. So I was busy, to answer your question, and there was lots of other little projects that I was doing, but no DIY. Behave yourself.
Well, one last question then. When I first bumped into you was working with Jamie and Nigel, helping fighters about their education and everything.
Yeah. And
it seems weird because I remember Sam Hyde was one of the fighters that was on the table with you. And Sam now.
Yeah, Johnny Case as well.
Johnny Cage, yeah. But I I think the film I think it was Sam, and I can't remember who the other fighter was, but I've just done some work for Sam. He's got a gym up in Sale, and like you say, you were talking about, you know, what happens after your boxing career, or if your boxing career you don't achieve what you want to achieve. Is that still going ahead? Are you still working with fighters? And
it's the kind of initiative that we want to. That was something that we were working on. The idea at the time, and I knew Sam before he. I think had he turned pro. I can't remember now, but I met Sam a long time ago, and it's like the idea is you get a hold of lads when they are at that age, when they are young and they're just about to turn over or whatever. The problem is that, you know, boxing, there's no safety net. There's no safety net whatsoever. So, you know, every fighter dreams of being a world champion and making millions and being the Ricky and doing all that, which is lovely, and it's the dream that everyone should have. But the percentage of fighters that make any real money, as we all know, is minuscule. So what they're going to do, you know, if you turn over, if you've not got any formal education, what you're going to do, even if you have the best career in the world, and again, you can look at Ricky as the best example. It doesn't even matter how much money you've got. What are you going to do when your career's over? Well, how are you going to earn a living, or how are you going to kind of live? If you've got nothing to do, it's no use to you. So the idea of what we were doing with Jamie was we partnered up with Salford City College at the time, because they had a great sport academy, and it was to get fighters involved with education without making it feel like education, basically. So they weren't going to the classroom, we were coming to them. So the idea was you can assess a fighter, because a fighter knows more than they realise. So in terms of getting a qualification for a fighter that would then allow them to go into schools to train, to coach, or, you know, basically get them a qualification that would mean that they could go into a corporation and do fitness programs or something like that, just using the knowledge that they already have. So fighters know about nutrition, fighters know about fitness, fighters know how to put on a session. They don't always realize that they can do that, sometimes I've found. And it was one area that you thought, well, could that help fighters going forward? They can earn while they train. And Steve Foster Jr. was a great example, because Steve was another one we spoke to about all this, because I think he had 4 fights in a row fall through. And it was absolutely devastating for him. So obviously he's training for a fight, and that's gone. So he's got all his expenses and no money. And it happened again and again, and through no fault of anyone's, but he's left there with no money. So it's kind of, what are you going to do? So, and again, a lot of lads work, of course you do, but if you want to be a full-time pro, is there a way of doing it so that you can be a full-time pro and earn? There's lots of other things we're looking at now to see how we can help fighters like that, to get them involved with apprenticeships and on all sorts of stuff like that. So, you know, obviously fitness is one obvious area that fighters can work in, you know, if they can be a PT or whatever, but it could be anything. It could be anything. So I think, you know, there is no union to look after boxers. It's a how do we do something that can help? It's hard, because, you know, there's very little money in the game. And, you know, I look at promoters that, I mean, I'm not saying this because it's you, Lee, but you look at Steve Wood and the work he does, and it's phenomenal. You know, the way he grafts to get fighters, you know, fights and get them paid and this, that and the other. It's incredibly hard, and it's going to be harder still now. We don't know what the crack is with spectators coming into, and what it's going to look like. This could go on, this whole lockdown, the virus could go on, so we just don't know. But, you know, people like Steve Wood and Steve Goodwin down south, and these promoters that put on all these shows and lose money and make sure the fighters, you know, they look after them as best they can, and they do an unbelievable job. But more people need to step up and help. That's where I'm kind of at now, and why I want to do. I want to get more businesses involved in boxing, and not just on the amateur scene. This is the thing, because of course we want kids off the street and in gyms. But what about the lads that are trying to pursue, and boys and girls, let me get that right, that are pursuing their dreams now as professionals? You know, they need help, and it's not just about throwing a few quid as a sponsor. It's got to be more strategic than that. What help can they have? Lifestyle skills, you know, if they do get the breaks, media work, and how they can get hold of that. I mean, that's an area that I want to pursue and help fighters with, all this kind of stuff. But you know, there's so much, and again, it's hard. It's hard for all the reasons I said, but it's something we've all got to keep striving to do.
Yeah, well, like I say, you're doing a great job. Like I say, Maverick Truck seems to be doing amazing job with every community that they're working with. Like I say, it's about community. It's not just about boxing, isn't it? It's about the boxing being absorbed into the community and the community blending in with it. So great, like I say, everywhere.
It is. I mean, I think that the big, one area that we're working on now, and we need to do more is this area of big business. I think there's so many small businesses and companies that have helped all the local gyms and continue to do so, and they do a brilliant job in terms of making sure that they fix the leaky roof when a gym's struggling. They've all, every gym has got people that have helped them, that have thrown, literally helped paper over the cracks. But there's got to be a more strategic thing, and this is what Maverick, again, we're doing, is to try and make it more strategic so that gyms are sustainable and not going cap in hand to the people that have always helped them. But we need bigger businesses involved, businesses that do need to put something back into the community, or they're not going to win tenders, they're not going to win contracts unless they're putting something back into the community. So what better way than to work on community projects, sports community projects, because there's nothing better than sport. Nothing better to motivate their own staff, nothing better to keep their own staff fit and healthy if they partner up with the gym or something like that. And nothing better, in terms of helping for all the right reasons people get involved and stay involved in sport, amateur and pro.
When a person has a connection, like all these young, the guys that sponsor the young fighters, when you have that connection with the fighter, doesn't it make the fighter all that much more enjoyable? Because you're living every punch, aren't you? You're living every blow because you feel like you've got a connection. That's why I like doing the little, interviews with the fighters before the fight, so people get to know these kids. And then if they get to know them, or they feel like they know them, they might never met them, but if they feel like they know them, then when they win and when they achieve, you get so much more gratification from it, because you're following that journey right from the beginning, and you feel like you know that kid.
Yeah, and you see sometimes that companies will get involved with Olympians. Obviously, those that they even before they've won the medals or whatever, if they think or they've heard that they're going to go onto great things, and that's brilliant and that's fantastic. But I think in an ideal world, what you want is businesses to get involved with all the kids that are fighting, or, again, if they do want to follow specific fighters past, great. Ideally, you want those fighters then eventually down the line, if they don't make the millions or whatever, they could end up working for those companies or going on some apprenticeship scheme when they're 19, 20, turning over and working with that company and having a long association. So it's not just, we'll give you a few quid for your expenses and let's see how you do. It just, there could be more done in terms of building the connection between business and sport and on that level, because as you say, everyone gets then completely engaged with someone's journey and how far they're going to get, and you highlight that with all your videos in terms of the lads that you're coming up in contact with all the time, and it's great. The more that we can get their stories out, the better, because I think sometimes then the penny drops with business and they think, well, hang on, I can tick that corporate social responsibility box and it'll be fun. We can get involved with boxing. We can see how that gym progresses or these fighters progress. So again, amateur or pro.
Yeah, I anything that can help boxing is a wonderful thing. Like I say, it's a great sport. And I believe it teaches kids life skills that you can, the skills that you learn in boxing. It's not just about punching people. It's the mental toughness that you develop. Every successful boxer has a very strong mindset, and I don't think people realise how mentally strong boxing can make you, not just physically.
I think, yeah, and it's been said a million times, hasn't it, about respect and discipline and everything else. But I think it's even more pertinent now in the times we're living in, when we're looking at all the racial issues that are still affecting the world. And I don't think there's a better sport than boxing for just treating everybody the same. I think the more that the good work of boxing that's highlighted, that's just, the more the better.
Brilliant. Dominic, it's always a pleasure, mate. Look forward to listening to you on the radio soon. And I say, see you at the show, hopefully before Christmas.
Cheers, pal. Thanks, Lee.
Take care, Dom. Bye.
For all boxing info, news and latest interviews, amateur and pro, across the north, click and subscribe. VIP Boxing Promotions. Also, Twitter, Instagram and Facebook.